Hello everyone. I just want to check that the presentation is visible and that you can hear me on the microphone. If you could write in the chat, you can hear me on the microphone. Good. Okay. Thumbs up. Plus. Okay. And the presentation is visible, right? All good. Okay. Great. Well, hello everyone. My name is Dave Schneider. Thank you for the introduction, Anton. And I'm going to be doing this presentation called How We Tripled Our Traffic and Signups Through Influencer Marketing Using NinjaOutre. And full disclosure, NinjaOutre is my software company. It's an influencer marketing software, but the main focus of today's presentation will be on influencer marketing. So let me see, move to the next slide. Firstly, I just wanted to say a little bit about myself and who I am. I know that the majority of the audience is from Ukraine and Russia, so I thought maybe I would do a short introduction in Russian, if that's okay, and then I'll switch back to English. Так что меня зовут Дэйв Шнайдер, я из Бостона, я учил русскому языку в университете в Гарварде, и у меня русская девушка, так что я немножко говорю по-русски, и если хотите задать вопросы в чате, я, может быть, могу ответить на эти. Так что обратно на английский язык. So what I was just saying, if you don't speak Russian, at least or what I thought I was saying, was that my name's Dave and I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I studied math and Russian at Harvard, and then I went on to become a business analyst at a financial services company until finally in 2012 I left to go backpacking, and that's when I started working online. I became more of a digital marketer, and then last year in 2014 I started NinjaOutre.com, which is a software application for influencer marketing. And in the last couple of years, I've been visiting a lot of different countries. I'm now in Costa Rica and just sort of working online. So the next part is sort of, I'd like to sort of get into the story, a little bit of NinjaOutre. And that's, we launched NinjaOutre live in January of last year, and of this year. And probably as many people can understand, if you run a business or a product or you have clients or things like that, you understand that when you launch something, you need an audience. But a lot of people, they work and work and work to build something, and then when it's finally time to launch it, there's really no one there to see it. They haven't really built an audience. It's a big problem. It's a big problem for startups, businesses, and it was a problem for us as well. When we wanted to launch in January, there was really no one to see us. So we started to go think about the different ways that we could generate traffic. Could we do paid advertising? Could we buy traffic? Could we do social media, different things like that? And we started to get into influencer marketing because we have an influencer marketing software, and it made sense that if we were selling a software to do influencer marketing, that we would be marketing through influencer marketing ourselves. So influencer marketing is almost sort of it's kind of a hybrid of sort of like content marketing and then working with influencers. So we started a campaign. The campaign was that we were going to publish and promote blog posts once a week, that we were going to reach out to other bloggers in our marketing niche and request for product reviews and guest posting opportunities. And then we were going to do link building, trying to build links on resource pages, other different articles online, and see if we could just sort of build links. It's a small startup, doesn't have a budget, so we didn't have any marketing budget, and we didn't really have much of a marketing team either. It was basically just me. And what happened was sort of this next slide, which is that we started to gain momentum, a little bit at least. We started with we had about 4,000 or so sessions in January, which is not that much at all, and it's definitely very hard to build an entire business around that. But we then started doing the influencer marketing campaign, and we've grown a bit, 3 times in 8 months. Now 12,000 sessions for some people it may be considered a lot. For some it's not. It really depends on what you're selling and things like that. But I can tell you that it's definitely made a big difference for us. So this is a chart of our signups, and it's the idea that these are people who are signing up for the software every week. So when we first started, we were having a couple people sign up a week, and now we were having over 60 recently, and it's all because we started growing our traffic and doing influencer marketing. So this has been kind of our story of the last 8 months, and this is the one that I kind of want to talk about today. Firstly, by kind of talking about influencer marketing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term. And I imagine some of you are and some of you are not. But we're going to talk about what influencer marketing is, how to go find influencers, ways to partner with influencers, how to pitch influencers, and then finally, if we have time, some other success stories that aren't just about Ninja Outreach. So firstly, I mentioned sort of influencer marketing was kind of this hybrid between content marketing and sort of working with influencers. And I think the mindset here is that consumers who are looking to buy products, they're looking to do shopping online, they know how to do research. They're looking to basically read reviews about products and look at them online before they get started shopping. So I just have a little post here from Facebook, and this is a friend of mine, and she said, she's looking for an apartment. Does anybody know anything? So she's looking out to her network to find people that she trusts to see if anybody knows anything about an apartment. And this is kind of the way that people do shopping nowadays. When they're looking to invest, to hire a business or a service or buy a product, they're pretty much looking around the internet to see what people are saying about it. So naturally, they look on retail sites and brand sites as a way to sort of influence their purchase. But outside of that, it's pretty much blogs and social media. Basically, your presence on blogs and social media is going to influence, to a large part, how your audience really perceives you and buys. So if that's the case, then you really want to be building an audience up of people through social media and blogging. But you're probably a business owner and maybe you don't have all the time in the world to start building an audience. So that's where you start maybe working with influencers, because influencers are these people on the right. They're bloggers, journalists, social media experts. They're people who it is their job to sort of build up an audience. It's their job to sort of basically write content, build authority, build trust, and build up a group of raving fans. And on the left is sort of maybe your business and blog, and you're just trying to get going and get some traction. But if you can sort of work with those guys, maybe you can start to kind of obtain some of their traffic as well for yourself and grow that way, which is kind of what we've been trying to do here at Ninja Outreach. So now, if you kind of can understand the concept of influencer marketing, which is that we're going to start sort of partnering with influencers who have a large audience to try to basically get their audience to work with us in our business. Now it's a question of how do you find them? Where do you go about trying to find influencers? And I suspect that everyone's first choice, certainly my first choice, would be to just do a Google search. So, for example, with Ninja Outreach, it's a marketing product, so we're looking for marketing influencers. So I might look for marketing blogs on Google. Now, Google's nice because you can see there's over 300 million results, so there's really no shortage of results. However, the way that they're organized is it's not exactly built to be easy to use, right? There's no contact information. There's no, we don't have any data about these websites. Some of these sites on the top are not even marketing influencers or marketing blogs. They're actually articles about marketing blogs, which is a little different. So it's useful in that it's easy, in that there's a big database to search from, but it's not particularly targeted or relevant. Another way that you can go about trying to find influencers is maybe looking at people who comment. A lot of bloggers who are influencers, they comment on other people's blogs. You can go into a post, look at the comments, you can see somebody's name. Usually the name links to a website, so you can go and find their website from that. Then you'll have a comment that you could reference as well. So that's kind of another way to go about it too. But again, it's a very manual process. You'd be looking at articles, you'd be looking at comments that people wrote, basically maybe building a spreadsheet, that sort of thing. Another one would be something like linkers. So now we start to get in sort of tools. Some of you may recognize this as being a tool from Moz called Open Site Explorer. There's some similar tools by Ahrefs and Majestic SEO where you can put in an article or a website and see who's linked to it. Because if somebody links to an article or a website, then they must have a website themselves, and they could potentially be a relevant influencer if they're basically kind of linking to a post that would be relevant to your industry. So that's one option too. And finally, I think we start to get into what are more like influencer databases. These are basically tools that were built to really organize influencers. I'd say maybe the most well-known is called BuzzSumo. If you haven't checked it out, it is a nice tool. It's got a free plan that you can use where you can type in words like marketing blogs, and it will tell you all the most shared articles on the web. So what articles have been shared most on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, things like that. And you can kind of leverage this to do influencer outreach, which is where you sort of organize the influencers that come up in the search results. Another tool that I like quite a bit is called FollowerWonk. FollowerWonk is another tool by Moz. It's specifically about Twitter. So when you type in a keyword like marketing blogs, you're going to get results that have marketing blog in their bio. And you know, if you can imagine with Twitter, where you only have like 140 characters to define who you are and what you're about, that if your keyword comes up for marketing blog, you probably have a marketing blog. You wouldn't really write it for any other reason. So it's pretty accurate, I think, to use this data. The only thing is it's mainly around Twitter. The metrics are around, say, number of followers, and there isn't contact information directly from the website. It only gives you their Twitter bio. And the last one to mention is, of course, NinjaOutre, which is our tool here. And ours is a little bit different from BuzzSumo and FollowerWonk. It does still sort of, you can put in the keywords like SEO or marketing blog or whatever the keywords are. You have a database where you can search through influencers. It pulls contact information. It pulls, you know, SEO metrics, traffic and engagement, that sort of thing. So it basically functions as kind of a prospecting tool, CRM, and outreach. And I can talk more about it later, but just continue on with the presentation, more about influencer marketing. Those are kind of the overview of tools that you can use to find influencers to partner with. Essentially, almost like all things, there's a manual way to do something, which is how to basically go into Google, go look for commenters, basically very manual labor to find them. It's cheap, it just takes a lot of time. Or you can leverage tools and technology, which cost a bit more. They're usually not too expensive. They could be somewhere around $50 a month. But they will kind of give you a more efficient way to search and find influencers in their database. So now that you can find influencers, how do you work with them? How do you get them to work with you? Well, if you remember from the earlier slide, I mentioned with NinjaOutre that we were trying to do things like product reviews and guest posts were some of the ways that we were working with influencers. So at a high level, there's sort of just what I call the sort of the three-circle diagram where you want to be in the center. So there's really three people involved in the relationship. There's the influencer, there's you, and there's their audience. And we're looking to please everybody. You know, you have to give something to the influencer to make them interested in working with you. You have to give something to their audience so that the influencer will then want to work with their audience. And then you want to keep something for yourself to make it worthwhile. And if you miss out on one of those things, it's just not going to work out for you. So there's really dozens of different things you could potentially do for their audience and for them. But some of the ways that we typically try to work with influencers is, number one, we'll offer for them to be an affiliate of the product. So we'll give them 50% commissions on any sales that they make. Some products have affiliate programs, some don't. If it's Amazon or something like that, they already have built-in affiliate programs. Definitely an affiliate program is a nice way to incentivize somebody to work with you, because it essentially says, if you make something for me, then you get something as well, and you're not on the hook to pay anybody unless that happens. But other instances, when you don't have an affiliate program, you may be asked to pay somebody up front. You know, sometimes bloggers just want to be compensated for the work that they're doing. They want to be compensated for putting in time to do a review or things like that. Lastly is really to give them something for free. So can you give them free product or free access or free copies to give away, things like that. So with NinjaOutre, for example, because it's a small startup with no budget, we don't have the money to pay people up front to basically say, hey, look, will you please review this tool for us? Instead, we offer them to be an affiliate, and then we give them access to the software. So anyone that reviews it, they get a free copy. And then we always offer to give their audience something free as well. And that way, everybody is sort of winning there, and everybody is kind of getting something for their time. So the different types, that's pretty much how you kind of win the influencer over in terms of basically how do you get them on board with the concept. Engagement is very important as well. Influencer marketing is very relationship driven, so it's about how you work with people, whether maybe you spend time to comment on their blog, whether you follow them on social media, do you engage with them before you ask for something. Those are the types of ways that we've seen are the best ways to get influencers on board working with you. It's tough to scale sometimes, but it does work a lot better than cold outreach. So if you understand the concept of really, how do you provide value to the influencer and their audience, and therefore you can then leverage that to form some sort of relationship, what are the different types of partnerships that people typically do with influencers? The first one is something I imagine many of you are familiar with is a guest post, which is basically like, I'm going to write a post on their blog about a topic or maybe my business or something like that, and usually you get a link back as well. We've done a lot of guest posting with NinjaOutre. I think we've published over 75 at this point, and we typically get people who they sign up. We ask them, well, where did you find us? And they say, well, I saw you mentioned on somebody's blog. We saw a guest post from you. And that's kind of the different ways that that works a lot, and that's very easy to do. Usually doesn't cost any money. It just requires some content writing. Another one would be something like to do a giveaway. So giveaways this works very well with software or products that are relatively low priced, or like an ebook or something like that, when you can give away copies to an audience and it doesn't really cost you extra money. So for us to give away free copies of NinjaOutre, because it's a software, it doesn't really cost any extra money. If it was an ebook or course, it wouldn't really cost any extra money either as well. It just doesn't work so well with maybe like a high-end product that's really expensive and you can't afford to give it away. But if you do have a lower-end product or client who has one of those products, a giveaway is a good way of doing it. And there's some different plugins out there like King Sumo and Rafflecopter that are meant to really accelerate giveaways, build in virality, shareability, things of that nature. So definitely looking at those if you're doing giveaways. Another would be something like product reviews. Product reviews they're somewhat similar to guest posts, except for two major differences. Number one, the product review is about the product, obviously. The content is about the product as opposed to some other topic. And number two, the influencer usually is the one writing the product review instead of you. And I really like product reviews for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're not really a good writer or you don't really have time to write, then asking the influencer to review the product is a much more effective way to generate content on their blog. That's number one. Number two, when the article is coming from the influencer, he has built trust with his audience. So already people are more familiar with him, more familiar with what he's doing, and they are more inclined to probably react to something that he puts out. And number three, if anybody searches for your business or the product that you're selling, and people do, right, before they go and purchase something, if someone's heard about NinjaOutre, before they sign up, they're going to go run a search for NinjaOutre. If you do a search like that, what's going to show up is not the guest posts that we've written, but the product reviews. It's all the people that wrote reviews about it. And when people will read those reviews because they want to know how it is, and then when they see that the reviews are positive, then it will incentivize them to buy. So if you do Google, say, NinjaOutre and many other tools, the first page is covered entirely by product reviews, and that's really good reputation management, really good branding. So I think that's definitely something to be considered. Other things that can be done, though they're not necessarily in my top three, would be something like recruiting affiliates who could promote the business to their newsletter, their social media profiles, put links in articles on their resource pages, things of that nature. And personally, whenever we do outreach for anything really, like whether it's a guest post or giveaway or a product review, we always invite people to become an affiliate of the product. And for us, it's a way to effectively build a relationship with them and kind of give them a reason not to just work with us once, but to work with us many times. So for example, if somebody's your affiliate, they have a reason to want to mention you in posts that they write that could be related because they can earn a commission. So if you can establish an affiliate relationship with somebody, then you're going to do better to get ongoing exposure. Other things would be something like social media exposure. So can we tweet? Can you share it? Can you give us a link? So we'll reach out to articles that are relevant, in our case, about influencer marketing or about content marketing software, and say, hey, could you include a link to our tool or this post that we wrote? Just kind of standard white hat link building is another way. And then lastly is something I call content features, and you may be familiar with things like expert roundups or posts that basically integrate a bunch of influencers into the content. And this is actually something that we would publish on our own website. So for example, this is a post that we published on the NinjaOutre blog. It's called 37 Inbound Influencers Tell Us How to Get Your Content Upvoted. We've done these a few times. They work very well. The reason is that these 37 influencers are participate in the post. They write the content for you pretty much because they're answering a question. That question and that answer becomes the content. And then when the post is published, all the people who are in it will share it because they've been featured in it, and it's just natural for them to kind of share the post. So you've already invited all these influencers to be featured on your blog, and then they're going to promote it out to their network, their social media, things like that. And all the traffic is going to go to you and your blog, as opposed to, say, like a guest post where the traffic will go off the website to them. So if you're not doing expert roundups, or you're not that familiar with the concept, it's not something that I would do, every day or every week. But we're trying to do them once a month because we find that they work really well. So those are the main ways that you sort of partner with influencers. The last sort of part in terms of the process of influencer marketing has to do with writing a pitch. We've seen dozens, if not more, of people writing pitches. I receive these myself, like inbound, just people reaching out to me. For example, Anton, sent a pitch to invite me to this webinar, and I've also written a bunch myself. And some of them are absolutely awful, and some of them are very good. And usually, it's pretty clear right away which one is going to be good and which one is not. Usually, the elements of a really bad pitch are that somebody doesn't personalize it, they don't mention your name, or they get your name wrong, which is probably even worse. The grammar and the vocabulary just isn't right. It doesn't sound right. All they're trying to do is spam about their service and what they can sell you. They're not really thinking about how they can work with you and how they can basically benefit you. And there's absolutely nothing personal about it. So instead of referencing maybe a post that somebody wrote, or a tweet, or a comment or something to kind of personalize the outreach, it's just extremely standardized. So basically, a good pitch is the exact opposite of that. It's a pitch where you address somebody personal, you're honest about what you're asking for, you keep it short if you can, and then you offer something of value to them and their audience. And if you need examples of good pitches, we have just kind of an example here. This one looks a bit long, maybe it is a bit long, but without going and reading the whole thing, it's personalized at the top with their name. We introduce ourselves. We talk about how we found them. We were very clear as to why we're reaching out to them. We said we wanted to ask if you'd be interested in having us write a guest post related to your audience. We build credibility, so we reference other guest posts that we've written. We talk about where we've done a blog post, things like that. And then lastly, we talk about the value that we're going to be providing to them and their audience. So this is what you're going to get. You're going to get a fresh piece of content. We're going to give you 1-year license to our product. We're going to give out product to your audience, and your audience is going to get a relevant piece of content that they're going to enjoy. That's sort of the value. So putting all that in an email, it's never going to be 100%. In fact, it probably won't even be close to it. Many people will still say no. Many people will still say nothing. But you'll definitely do better. You'll get better success rates. And at least the people that say no or decline, they're not going to think poorly of you. They're not going to think that you're a spammer and that this was just cold outreach. They're just going to say, they're just not interested, and that's okay. So the last bit of the presentation before we talk about some different, I guess open it up for questions if there are any, is just to briefly talk about a few other case studies, because I didn't want this to just be talking about, this is what we did at Ninja Outreach, but, we don't know if this concept really works anywhere else, but that actually there are a lot of big businesses that are doing influencer marketing, really businesses of all sizes. The first one that I really like is Groove. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Groove. They have a blog. You should definitely Google it. There's a customer support software, but they write about their journey of how they're building the business and how they started. And one of their early articles says, nearly a month before they launched the blog, they started building a list of influencers who they wanted to build relationships with. They started engaging with them. So they started commenting on their blog. They started following them on social media. They signed up for their newsletter, and then they replied to messages that got sent to them. And then finally, months later, when they launched the blog, and these people saw them as not just cold strangers, but familiar people, they said, hey, would you be willing to kind of share this article, or would you take a look at this new blog that we just launched? And within 5 weeks, they built a following of 5,000 subscribers, which is quite a lot when you're first starting out. So Groove has done really well. They do a lot of influencer marketing, content marketing. They do a lot of guest posting, things like that. So I definitely think they're really a great example. The other one would be Buffer. Buffer is probably the most well-known, one of the most well-known social media tools in the marketing space. They have thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of users actually, but it wasn't always like that. They also started from nothing at some point. They started their product. They had to build an audience. They had to do it all from scratch, and they didn't get funding for a while either. And one of the ways that they did it was through guest posting. Leo, who is not the CEO, but I don't know if he's CFO or something, he's one of the head guys at Buffer. He said he wrote around 150 guest posts to build traffic to his blog, to Buffer. So he worked with influencers to basically get the word out there about Buffer. Traffic and brand for Buffer eventually grew. People would come back to the website, and finally they signed up for the tool. And within 9 months, they had 100,000 users, and now they're doing extremely well, as you can tell from the dashboard chart on the right, that their business is growing very well. And they continue to run a very nice blog, do a lot of content marketing, and partner with influencers to basically build their audience. So even though they're large now, they continue to do influencer marketing. So those are sort of two other businesses in the marketing niche that do very well with influencer marketing. So I think my time is just about up. It's already been about 30 minutes, flies by. I wanted to put in my contact information if anybody wanted to reach out to me. Email address is dave@ninjaoutreach.com. Our website is ninjaoutreach.com, where you can see the tool. I also have a personal blog where I do write about startups and growth and the journey and what's going on. You can follow us on Twitter, even add me on Skype, and then I'm on LinkedIn as well. So thanks again for everyone's attention and just for listening to me for just half hour today. Spasibo za vнимание. And in case there are any questions or anything that people have, something that wasn't sure, feel free to ask in the chat. I'll be happy to answer it.
Yeah, we do have some questions. You have to read them out loud.
Sure. So Natalia asked, do you have any approximate statistics about how many influencers reply/agree to publish a post? Yes, I have some approximate numbers for that. So, and it really depends on what you're asking. But if you're asking for, say, a product review or a guest post where you're actually willing to give something to the influencer in return for what they're doing, I'd say you can get to somewhere between 10%, maybe 20% to say yes. The thing is, when you're first starting out and you're first asking for somebody to publish a post or something like that, and if you don't have any credibility, it's going to be less. But as you start to kind of get published, maybe people know you, you can reference an article on a website or a blog that's well known, that will help build your credibility and it will grow. So it starts off slow, but it does pick up. Something like when you're asking directly for a link, like, hey, can you put a link to me on your resource page or in this article, and you're not really giving them any content or anything like that, that's going to be a lot less. That's going to be like single-digit percents, could even be less than that. But you know, it's also a lot less work to do that because you don't have to write content, you don't have to give away product and things like that. But that's pretty much what we've seen with our own business and with other people. Hopefully that answers your question.
Do we have more questions? Well, I have a question. Can I? Yeah, thanks. Natalia says, could I make a review on your product and you will give me your product for free for my review?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
yeah, so,
great. Okay, we'll do.
Happy to have people review the product, and in exchange we could give it out for free. Great. Is there anything else? Any questions about best practices guys, for outreaching media houses and news websites?
Any more questions? Okay. Yeah, there is.
Yeah, I just saw a question from Abbas. He asked about best practices for outreaching media houses and news websites. So basically, in this case, it's less about bloggers and more about, say, journalists. And in almost in any case, you really need to find a point of contact at the place that you're reaching out to. So on blogs, it's generally easy, right? Because you know this is the owner of the blog, and a lot of blogs are run by individuals. But if it's a media house or a news website, and there could be dozens of people that work there, and the only way to get in contact with them is through like a contact form, then it's going to be very difficult. So some things that you can do, for example, is go on Twitter. And for example, there are two tools that I mentioned. One is FollowerWonk and the other NinjaOutre. Both of them have a Twitter database. And for example, let's say I was trying to reach out to TechCrunch. I could run a search for TechCrunch in Twitter, and a lot of people would show up and say that they're the editor of TechCrunch or writer for TechCrunch. And that's kind of a way to, because journalists write about where they in their bio they define who they write for. So try to find a point of contact. I think Twitter is a good source. LinkedIn is another source as well, where people talk about where they write, and then try to build a relationship with that person, engage with that person, and pitch them specifically. Always pitch an individual. Another question was whether the same rules to find influence at the local level or region where English is not a native language. Sure. Well, I should mention a few things about influencer marketing, and that's that I do feel that influencer marketing can potentially work for everybody, but it does have its strength and its weaknesses. Think of influencer marketing as a traffic channel. So for example, one traffic channel could be paid advertising. One is influencer marketing. Influencer marketing is not great for local targeted traffic, because most influencers do not define themselves by saying, you know, I'm a blogger from Kiev. You know, it's they maybe are a blogger about fashion or marketing or a topic, and their audience could potentially from all over the world or all over a large country. So if you're like a local business, if you're like a really local business, like at a city level or even lower, influencer marketing may not be super effective. Paid traffic, for example, may be more effective because you can target by geography. So that's just something to kind of consider about influencer marketing and where it's strong and where it isn't. Now, lastly, if English is not a native language, I guess maybe there's two thoughts there. The first is obviously that, you know, when you're doing your outreach, if you're reaching out to people where English is not the native language, then basically, you know, if you can write it in their native language, obviously that's sort of ideal. If you are maybe struggling with your own native, like using English when it's not your native language to reach out to somebody else, I would definitely encourage you to see if you can find somebody who could kind of proofread the template for you, who has like strong English, because unfortunately, when I think, you know, people from the U.S. or the U.K., if they're being reached out to and they read English that doesn't quite look right, it definitely kind of sets off a few alarms. And I guess in the last point maybe is what you're just asking about influencer marketing at a local level. You know, I think it's still one of those, it's still relatively new. It's somewhat of a relatively new marketing trend. I don't think necessarily everybody kind of has heard of it or gotten on board with it. And usually these trends, they take place first in more Western countries like the US, the UK, Australia, and those countries are starting to develop influencer marketing programs. And I'm not overly familiar with influencer marketing in other countries like in the East or, you know, maybe like Russia, Ukraine, and things like that. But I imagine that it's probably still kind of developing as something that could be worthwhile. So hopefully that sort of answered some of your questions there. Anything else that people were curious to know about the presentation or myself or NinjaOutre? Natalia says, okay, thanks, Diansh. Natalia wrote, is there some strategy on how to choose the most effective blogs and influencers that you're starting to do internet marketing for a new company or in a field that you don't know well yet? Yeah, so firstly, in terms of how we go about choosing blogs and influencers, you know, usually we start with kind of certain metrics. So you're probably familiar with metrics like Twitter following or maybe domain authority or page rank or SEO or things like that. The thing is, there's a ton of different metrics out there. There's dozens of marketing metrics, and I don't think it's a good idea to overly get obsessed with the different metrics out there. I usually think it's a good idea to think about one or maybe two metrics that will give us an idea of whether the person has a large following and whether they're engaged. So for example, to know that somebody has like a large following, I might look at something like their Twitter following. If they have a lot of Twitter followers, they have a large following. Their traffic, if I can't, for traffic, I might use something like Alexa rank as a way to kind of give me an idea of what their traffic is. Not necessarily exactly what it is, but where they rank. So if they have like a low Alexa rank, maybe below 50,000, I have an idea that that person is, you know, they're sort of an influencer. They have a lot of traffic and they could be worthwhile to basically work with. And the other thing I might look at is like engagement. So things like, are people commenting and sharing on their websites and blogs? Because that tells us that their audience is going to react to something that we put out. So I've seen plenty of people that have a large amount of traffic, but they don't really have an engaged audience. Maybe they have one post that's giving them a lot of traffic and nobody really kind of engages with that. So those are different ways I would normally try to identify influencers. Now, if it's in a field that you don't know well yet, like for example, automotive industry or something like that, it obviously becomes somewhat more difficult. Some things I might do is I might honestly go to Google and do a search for the top automotive bloggers or the top bloggers in men's fashion. Just try to get me an idea of the competitive landscape, who's out there. There's a lot of posts out there that will say these are the top 100 bloggers in so-and-so niche. So at a minimum, you can do something kind of like that, where you can just kind of see who's out there, who is kind of rated as top. That may not be enough to run a campaign, and you may also have difficulties with people who have a large following, or the people who often don't respond the most because they're busy with other things. But that would be how I would start. And then I would, again, just kind of do my regular searching and look at metrics like Twitter and Alexa to try to understand who do I think has a large following in this niche. So hopefully that sort of answers your question as well.